Cole Cubelic joins us. The college football playoffs, and which game intrigued you the most coming up this weekend starting on Friday night?
I do think that Indiana-Notre Dame game has a lot of intrigue for a lot of reasons. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think the Notre Dame defensive line can hold up well against what Indiana brings to the table, but their linebackers have to have a good game. Indiana's defense, super aggressive. They move a lot. The defensive ends are very aggressive. They play down, they get upfield. And with some of the quarterback run stuff that Notre Dame does, and then some of the just straight downhill runs where they attack it pretty quickly, I could see Indiana out of position. So I could see that one going either way. Don't think Curtis Rourke gets the credit that he deserves, is how good of a college quarterback he is. And I do think Indiana's skill is much better than people imagine. But for me, it's Tennessee and Ohio State. I think Tennessee is a more physical football team. When you watch their offensive line operate, it might not be the cleanest in college football, but they get after you as much as any other group I've seen this year. They'll get some penalties. It might cost them at times, but they're a physical group. And I don't know any other group in college football that goes as deep and talented on the interior of their defensive line as Tennessee does. And then you throw in James Pierce and Bishop on the outside. They have edge guys that can play also. They rotate about 11 guys in on that defensive line. So I'm willing to see if Ohio State's offensive line with a new center and having to move some tackles around in the middle of the year, not really the same as they were physically at tight end last year, although I do think G. Scott does some good work for them. We know what those running backs are like, but Michigan gave them fits up front. I think Tennessee can replicate that. And if the weather's going to be what people say, it might not matter how good the Ohio State wide receivers are. So that one has the most intrigue for me because I think those are two teams talent-wise and scheme-wise that match up better with some of the other teams that people think maybe could win a national title.
Is it part of the key also for Ohio State is Ryan Day? Look, he coaches tight against Michigan. And then after losing that game again, how do you not coach tight now against Tennessee in a playoff game?
For me, and this is opinion based on things I've heard and people I've spoken to, the reason I think he may not be tight and coach tight is he might be out of there anyway. I think there's a part of him that's over a lot of the peripheral BS, if you will, of what's going on with that job because he's been magnificent. He's done a great job. He has not defeated Michigan as many times as people would want, but he's been in position to win national championships. Now, he doesn't have one, but how many teams out there would have liked to at least just been in that spot a couple of times like he's been? He's in the college football playoff this year, and Ohio State fans are talking about running him. So I think they may open it up a little bit more, but once again, I think the weather might have something to do that. Here's the thing you can say, and I agree with you. One thing that I didn't agree with, though, because the mindset, I have the advantage, usually working on Saturday nights, of I see what everyone says about games, and then I go watch them on Sunday, Monday. And my producer for our Monday night show on the SEC Network's a big Michigan fan. So we always talk Michigan almost every week, even though we don't use them on the show. And he was like, man, Ohio State tried to play Michigan's game. They tried to play Michigan's game. They couldn't do it. They were trying to prove a point. So when I go back and I watch it, I could see where people would think that. But the reality is when you get a 5 or 6 man box, you hand it off. That's the correct call. That's the correct move. So if we're playing chess, they're making the correct moves. And it just so happens that the person that they were playing against was a little bit better in the spots that they were attempting to attack. But the numbers told them to attack that way. So I don't think it was as stubborn of a plan against Michigan as a lot of people do, but they still got pushed around, and they still were not the more physical team. And I think that might be the part that most Ohio State fans are frustrated with. If you go back to the end of Urban Meyer's run, I mean, you had defensive linemen, second-team defensive linemen, tight ends, running backs, like third down backs that were just bruisers and just punched people in the face. They were just bullies. And there's not a lot of that on this team or the last couple teams, really and truly. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, but that's a lot of where football's going. So I think this might be it for him no matter what happens, and it might be on his accord.
Cole, your thoughts on Texas taking on Clemson and what ought to be a fun game down in Austin? And as an aside to that, were you more surprised by Oklahoma's struggles or Texas' ability to kind of run through their schedule in their first year together there in the SEC. What stood out to you more, Oklahoma struggling or Texas ascending?
It couldn't be Texas because, I had him in the Alamo Bowl, and I've known Sark for a while, and I've known Kyle Flood for a while, and so I've paid attention from a distance to that program. I also know Taylor Searles, whose father is the offensive line coach at Georgia. So he's a recruiting coordinator. So I've had a lot of conversations with how they have been handling the preemptive strike of moving to the Southeastern Conference. And Sark's time in the SEC, I think, allowed him to understand these are the type of people and bodies we need to compete there. And then seeing them up close a couple of years, last year in the Sugar Bowl and the year before that in the Alamo Bowl, I knew what they were about physically. And that's where usually most teams are just not able to hang for a long period of time. The Oklahoma part, it would be Oklahoma, but it would be understandable. When you lose 4 or 5 receivers and you don't play the same offensive line the first 7-8 weeks of the season, and your starting 5 is different, every week of fall camp, and you're starting a younger quarterback on top of all that, you're going to have some problems. And the defense didn't struggle because the defense didn't have the injury issues, and they got some benefit of younger guys stepping up and making some plays. So it would still be Oklahoma, but it would be an understandable surprise when you look at the circumstances.
Speaking of that young quarterback, he's headed to Auburn. Your thoughts about the pickup of what Jackson Arnold can do and what Hugh Freeze can help him maybe take it to another level?
I was shocked that he didn't end up at Mississippi State because I've had conversations with Jeff Lebby about him, Jackson Arnold. And, Jeff has straight up told me he's the most talented guy he's ever worked with. And just felt like getting back to that system with that coach would have probably been what's best for him. But I don't know what's best for him. That was just my opinion. I do know Auburn upped the ante a little bit on the NIL, and that helped. But he's in a bad place right now. And if it's quick game, if it's ball in the mesh, pull it out, throw it right away, it looks pretty, and it's on time, and it's a good ball, and it's a spiral, and it's accurate, and he's got great wheels, and he's tough. I commend him for how he handled being benched this year because we had Oklahoma a couple of times, and that staff, Coach Venables and the staff, raved about how he handled himself. You don't get that. There's multiple kids that have lost their job that said, "Screw it, I'm not even playing the rest of the year. I'm out." So I think he's a competitive kid. He's a gamer, but mentally, his eyes are in a really bad spot right now. Once he gets past the quick game, he's lost, and so he needs a reset. And he needs someone that can speak his language during that reset. Hopefully Hugh Freeze can do that. I do think part of what Coach Freeze can probably do is simplify some things and just have it be, hey, 1, 2, run. If it's not here, go here. And if it's not, tuck it and go. Because Coach Freeze is going to run some tempo, and a lot of his stuff is quick, easy reads. And so if they can maximize his potential inside of that, and he can see it and get it and understand it, he could have a big year. He's got a good set of receivers. They've upgraded at the tackle position. The kid they got from USC is a really good player. The kid from Virginia Tech has a chance to be a good player. He's long. He's physical. He plays hard. He's a little bit of a backbender. He's got to work on his lower body flexibility. But there's not many quarterbacks in the portal that are more talented than Jackson Arnold. That's for sure.
Cole, while we're on the subject of the transfer portal, Walker White of Auburn is in the portal. He's going to be visiting here at the end of the week. Any thoughts on him and just what you heard while he was at Auburn, and just thoughts on him now being a guy that's out there looking for a new home as well?
Things that I heard: big arm, major league arm, can make all the throws, but probably more important, great locker room guy. Supports everybody on the team, wants what's best for everybody else. Not a me guy, which for obviously you guys know like I do. For a quarterback, sometimes that's a little bit rare. Does everything the right way, wants to win, wants what's best for the team. But I do think, like, physically, he's got the tools to be a big-time quarterback. I think part of the problem this offseason was Hugh thought he needed another year to maybe sit and wait, and he didn't want to see other guys come in and do that. So he's going to take his talent somewhere else. But I haven't heard anything negative about him. And obviously he didn't get first, second team reps, but I do know that he was the guy that if everyone on the roster were to return, that was the one that Hugh was looking most forward to seeing working and improving and maybe being the guy down the road.
How important is it for Hugh to get Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight, like this quarterback? You're right, because for the first 2 years, I mean, that's one thing he did well at his other stops was coach quarterbacks, but that's been that big black hole there now at Auburn for the 2 years he's been there.
It's critical. I think the Auburn fan base patience has essentially run out. I think that, and some of that is his own doing, talking about the roster and how hard the job is. I don't think fans really sympathize with that. You're making $6.5 million a year. Fans don't care how hard the job is. They know you have everything in front of you to be able to go out there and win. And I give the Auburn administration and collective and people behind the collective credit. They're stepping up this offseason again. So they're kind of doubling down on him, saying, listen, we're going to help you best we can, but you better get it right this time. If he gets Jackson Arnold right, they'll be a really good football team. Because like I said, they're going to have talent at running back. They're going to have a lot of talent at receiver. The offensive line should be upgraded a little bit. I don't know if the defense can match what they did last year, but not a lot of people paid attention to the numbers. That defense was really good. I mean, they were number one in the SEC in yards per game for a couple weeks towards the end of the season. So I don't know if DJ can get that group exactly back to where it was last year, but getting Amaris Williams announcing that he's going to come back, Keldrick Falk is going to be back on that defensive line. He had a big year. I think the linebacker numbers are still going to be solid. So if he gets quarterback to work, the schedule lines up really nice. I mean, for an SEC schedule, they're all tough, but for an SEC schedule, it lines up for them to put some wins together. And if he doesn't, then yeah, the seat's going to get hot pretty quick.
Cole, your thoughts about the Big 12 and how they finished with Arizona State red hot, with what Colorado did and BYU did, and Iowa State, of course, got blown out in the championship game, and how their first year with these new 4 teams went, in your opinion?
It was awesome. First off, it was just fun to watch. Just a fun brand of football. I've gotten to know Kalani Sitake, so I love watching BYU and how they operate and just who they are. Got to know Dave Aranda a little bit when he was at LSU. I'm a big fan of the Samurai. And then obviously what Coach Prime did at Colorado, he's been able to do what almost no one in the portal has been able to do. And everybody thinks it's just upgrading talent. Well, Florida State went and got talent last year after they went undefeated. That didn't work. A lot of teams have gone and gotten talent. He upped the ante on physicality in winning the line of scrimmage, and very few teams have been able to do that through the portal. He did that on both sides of the ball, and they won because of that. Travis Hunter was amazing. Shedeur Sanders, incredible. They went and got Will Shepard from Vanderbilt. He was a great player, but they don't have the season they had without being a different team physically, and he made them that. That's the most impressive part, I think, of what he's done so far at Colorado, and he's done a lot of impressive things. And then what Kenny's doing at Arizona State is just, it's fun to watch, man, because it is literally, you know what they're going to do. I mean, they're going to run counter and power, gap scheme. They're going to pull guys around, and Scatterboo and those, they just don't care. And the thing that I love about Arizona State when I watch them is specifically in that run game, and the quarterback helps him out a lot too. He's crafty, man. Like he's a little bit of a playmaker. Doesn't have the skill set of a lot of other guys that you would reference that way, but he gets them out of jams. He makes some plays every now and then, but they make themselves right a lot. Somebody misses a block, or they miss a blitz, or they run the ball into an overloaded front. They have this knack of just being able to find a crease, find some space, and making each other right. They've been a blast to watch. And physically, they're going to be a handful for Texas or Clemson. I actually picked that upset. I think Texas gets past Clemson, and I picked Arizona State to win. I just think the time off and the different style of football in which they operate, not turning the ball over and just really getting after you. Now, they can't run with Texas, so if that becomes a perimeter game, they'd be in trouble. But we're going to get an upset somewhere, so that was the one I just decided to go with.
With Texas and Clemson this week, I don't think Phil Moffitt's going to play for Clemson, and even if he did, he's going to be facing a defense that does not allow you to run with extreme prejudice. I mean, that is what they do very, very well. Can Clemson do what they did against SMU and get out early against Texas, or is that something that this defense is not going to let them do?
If they can force them into mistakes, they can. But I think that has to happen if they're going to do it. I had Texas Vanderbilt this year, and Vandy was able to jump out, and they made Texas make a few mistakes. And then Vanderbilt suffered from the problem that a lot of teams did play in Texas this year. They didn't tackle well. It's why Georgia's giving them fits. Georgia tackles in the open field. If you're going to beat Texas, you've got to get ball carriers to the ground in space. That's it. That is the most important facet of beating that football team. But I do think Clemson's active up front defensively. They could cause some problems there. That Texas offensive line has been hit and miss this year. Love Kelvin Banks. Love Jake. I love the guys at center, Jake Majors. But they've turned guys free on a fairly regular basis. Now, some of that has been teams knowing what pressure to bring against what protection. It hadn't necessarily been that group, but I think they can force them into some mistakes. It's just going to be, can Texas get out of those things that look like they might be something that would cause that? I think it's going to be tough. I do think Cade Klubnik's played better than people give him credit for. He hasn't turned the ball over near as much this year. He's taken care of the football. They'll challenge Texas down the field, which is where I think if you're going to get them, you kind of have to. But the problem with that is now you got Bill Norton, Vernon Broughton, those guys in the middle that can stuff it up. I mean, go back and watch Georgia in the SEC championship game. They got nothing in the A-gaps. Zero. All the run game that they started getting going later was off tackle. Well, now you got Colin Simmons off tackle, Trey Moore off tackle, where if you get in third and longs, they put B.J. Hill out there. He'll rush you off the edge. You're not going to have time to be able to push the ball down the field because they can get home. It'll be a tough task, but I actually think it's more on the Clemson defense than it would be the Clemson offense if they win that game.
Cole, you're clearly somebody who loves college football. We all love college football. We talk about it every day. But there's a lot of disagreements on the state of it and a lot of hand-wringing over the portal and even the expanded playoff. Not everybody's on board with that. I was just curious, what's your anticipation, your excitement level for what we're about to see start unfolding this Friday?
It's up there, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure it's where I thought it was going to be,
okay.
and I don't know why that is. To just be perfectly frank with you guys, it could be that I'm not working this weekend, and that pisses me off. Okay. So plain and simple.
Hey.
I mean, I don't know another way to say it, and I'm just trying to be honest, but like I feel like I need to be – if there's games on, I feel like I need to be working them. So maybe I'm just feeling sorry for myself. But I do think some of the matchups are going to be great. I think seeing these games – in Columbus, in South Bend, in Happy Valley is going to be awesome. It's going to be so good. DKR is going to be loud. It's going to be fun. These environments are going to be exactly what we wanted. I think games like Tennessee, Ohio State, Indiana, Notre Dame are going to be fantastic. Some of the second-round games look like they could just be incredible. Whether it's Tennessee or Ohio State, that game against Oregon could be great. I think Notre Dame, Georgia, or Indiana, Georgia could end up being good, specifically with the quarterback situation at Georgia, what's going on. I don't know. I kind of expected myself to just be like on the edge of my seat nonstop leading up to this thing. And it's all right, cool. Like I'm ready for it. I'm going to watch it. I'm excited about it. But I think a lot of people are, maybe it's just people are still, I want to see how this operates first before I get all crazy, happy, excited.
Last thing, the picture or the jersey behind you on the wall that you have framed when you played at Auburn, how much fun would it be to block for someone like Cam Scatterboom?
Well, I had Rudy Johnson, so it wasn't too much. It wasn't too much further from that. I mean, I had Rudy Johnson and Heath Evans, which those guys made us right a lot. Now they didn't have like the WWE belts and all that other kind of stuff doing the interviews, so that might have been. I think we handled a lot of that stuff. So they didn't do the talking. Rudy was actually a really quiet guy, but I mean, he just seems like there are certain guys in college football that raise the level of play of their teammates. And it's not just because they're good, and it's not just because they make plays. I mean, Cam Newton was an incredible athlete and a great football player, but everybody else just played different around him. I think DJ Lagway at Florida is one of those guys right now. When he's been in and out, it's two different teams, and the defense is different when he's not playing. I think Scatterboo's one of those guys where it's just everybody else. The thing that we don't understand sometimes about certain guys in college football is there's certain guys that are liked and likable and lovable inside the locker room. Therefore, everyone wants to play hard for them. They want to help them succeed. They want to see them do well. And not that most guys are looking at their teammates saying, God, I hope he drops that pass, or I hope he fumbles on that, or I hope he throws a pick. It's not that. It's just other guys go way above and beyond that to where all of their teammates – I'm going to tell you who I think is one of those guys potentially is Gunnar Stockton, because I was on the field in Atlanta and everybody with me agreed that Georgia sideline was different when they found out he was coming in the game. And I've talked to some people on that staff, and I had one of his high school games, and the coaches raved about his competitiveness, his toughness, what a gamer he was, how much his teammates loved him, how much he loved his teammates. There are just certain guys that make everybody else play at a different level. I think Cam Scadaba is one of those guys. It could be attitude. It could be just how much fun he has. It could be the fact that he loves contact. That'll get offensive linemen going. If I see my back turning, not going out of bounds and trying to knock a DB out, we're probably going to block for you a little bit longer. Like, we're going to bring a little something extra the next time around.
Cole, you mentioned DJ Lagway there. I'm not wishing this on Graham Mertz or whatever to say, but I could make the argument that Graham Mertz's injury saved Billy Napier's job.
Possibly.
I mean, that's the basketball coach, but
I understand where you're going because, yeah, that probably helped a little bit too, some distractions. But I think also like Trayvon Baugh, freshman running back coming along, Caleb Banks at defensive tackle started to play out of his freaking mind the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. The problem is, if you go look at Mertz's numbers when he got hurt, he led the SEC in like 5 categories at that time. He was super efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. So he was playing pretty good football. It's just so happened when they lost him, they lost their best receiver, and they lost a couple guys on defense, and all of a sudden they look like a totally different team. Montrell Johnson gets banged up. So I do think DJ was maybe a little bit more of a rallying call for a lot of the guys to say, hey, let's finish this strong. We got this kid in now. He can make us different. And he is. Like, he's a different player, man. Like, he can just do things that you're not supposed to be able to do with the football.
Cole, great stuff, man. We appreciate your time. Really do.
have a great
How big is
holiday.
this setup that you guys have here? Like, we need 3 cameras to go to different people on the set. Like, how far left and right are we going when we get these different camera angles?
And about 10 feet.
Yeah.
No,
You guys hate each
you
other
got
that
right
much?
shot.
Look
There we
at
go.
that. Man, everybody gets their own table? That's a setup right there.
We don't like each other. We do not like each other. Hey, man, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
He does
Anytime,
a
guys.
Great podcast with Greg McElroy, obviously a part of SEC Network and ESPN, and the monster of WJOX in Birmingham. That's Cole Cubelic, played at Auburn, and now a part. Love hearing him. You could tell, like you said, that he loves college football. Loves college football.